What up, guys? It's your boy
What
Nick
up? What
here.
up?
James, Zach, we're
Hey.
back. We've been in, I guess, Thanksgiving food coma or
Yeah, we've been a little bit MIA, but not that bad.
Not like Miami MIA.
No, not like Miami MIA.
sheesh. Hey, yeah, that team.
Hey.
We're gonna touch on the NBA content, touch base with. I guess we'll start off with who are y'all's biggest surprise team so far right now?
I mean, I think it goes without saying the Kings for me. Like, I don't know that they're good or the West is bad, but I'm going to give them the credit and say that they did something right, and they're good because they really are good. That team scores points really good, and Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox are a good combination to build around, in my opinion. I'm going to go with the Kings, and I also want to say that we all thought they were retarded for drafting. They didn't for not getting Jaden Ivey, and it all worked out. Good job.
Yeah, the Kings, I thought going in, the Kings were going to have a fun offensive team with the roster they constructed, but then they lost their first, 3 or 4 games, and I was kind of more surprised on that. I was like, this team's not going to be a contender, but they're better than this. Then they ripped off that streak, and that made a little more sense. It's a fun team. And the West really does take a drop after 6 or 7, and the Kings are really primed to just dominate any of those teams below the top tier of the West, just because of how explosive they are with the Sabonis Fox combination. They can outrun most teams, and then they can also slow it down too in the post. So
the only thing that makes me nervous about a team like the Kings is that Minnesota currently sits in 11th place, 3.5 games behind first place. So that in the long run, that's nothing, you know?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest surprise the first couple of weeks, obviously, I think, was the Jazz.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about them is if we're doing this 2 months from now, they may be in the last 3 spots in the West by then. While I think this team is scrappy and has what it takes to be one of those teams that just sticks around and beats all the bad teams and can hang with the good teams, it's hard for me to think Danny Ainge is cool with it, with what they did in the offseason, blowing it up, everyone thinking there would be players for Wembanyama. So I wouldn't be shocked because, like you said, how packed in the West is. If the Jazz lost 6 in a row, which could happen to anyone, then all of a sudden, maybe Conley's traded, maybe Clarkson's traded. And while this is a fun team that, as constructed, I think could be a playoff team, maybe not higher than 6, but they could even get the 6th seed or maybe one of the bubble or one of the play-in spots. So they've been a surprise, but I would also be surprised if the Jazz are still up here come January.
I kind of foresee a lot of teams going to the Jazz to poach players. Like, I just feel like you might get a team like the Trailblazers who might find themselves desperate to stay in the play-in and go get a Jordan Clarkson or somebody like that, So that's why I think Danny Ainge is for sure selling as much as he can this season. And he wants Victor, so you can't tank if you're winning. But also, like, Kelly Olynyk would help another team. Lauri Markkanen might help Lauri Markkanen at this point, from the way he's playing, he might fetch you a first-round pick.
Yeah, he's balling.
Bet on him. Yeah, I think for sure the Kings and the Jazz, I mean, those were the 2 of the teams we kind of dogged on before the season started. Jazz, of course, were trading not 1 but 2 of their superstars, and then Kings just for being the Kings and existing. But they honestly have been scrappy. I mean, I've gotten to see the Jazz a lot more than I wanted to because they played my Rockets more this year. But the Kings, a lot of those games, you hear a lot of the players like talking shit to those guys, and they're showing up. They're going out there and competing and like just making sure like, hey, this is not an easy win. I mean, they think their last loss was to Boston, and then they had another loss to I think the Hawks, and those are scrappy games that they could have won, that they were up there. I mean, scored 100 points. I mean, is nothing in the NBA now, but It's just like some of their scores like are ridiculous so far.
I'm also a little bit surprised by Memphis because I thought that they had so much change and turnaround going into this season. I didn't think they would do that well.
And we all shit on them during the draft too, and it turns out they actually made a couple good picks.
But I also do want to see how this season plays out because they don't play how they did last year. They're a little bit different. They're not as gritty and grimy as they were last year. I think they're a little bit more of a basketball team, and I don't know if that's going to hold up for them.
Yeah, and two other surprisingly disappointing. Well, not super surprising for the Bulls, but the Bulls and the Timberwolves find themselves at somewhat similar spots. The difference is the Timberwolves have a budding superstar in Anthony Edwards, but the Gobert trade is quickly becoming one of the worst, if not top 3 worst trades in NBA history. And that's already. I know it's a little soon. We don't even know what draft picks those draft picks are going to turn into player wise, but that fit is so clunky. And then with the Bulls, because with the T-Bulls, you could say, okay, you give them time. It's only been however many games, 20 games. It's going to take some time for them to learn to play each other. But this is basically the same Bulls team as last year, and they're middling. I know Lonzo's still out, so there's that. But I really think they need to figure out what they're doing as a franchise. I know they've been through a few half rebuilds the last few years, but they need to commit one way or the other.
I've watched some Minnesota games lately, and I'll say this. I agree they severely overpaid for Rudy. It goes without saying. What Rudy offers that team on defense is far and beyond anything Karl Anthony Towns can offer you. Karl Anthony Towns is the problem on that team right now. It's not Gobert. Because Gobert cleans up so much shit on people on defense, and Jaden McDaniels, by and away, should be Defensive Player of the Year right now. If you watch his highlight tape on defense, elite. So then they try to do the same things with Cat, and he's just not capable. It's like, dude, you're 7'1" and you had 4 rebounds last night. Like, that can't happen. I would honestly say if I'm the Timberwolves and I can't get myself out of the 11th spot, I would entertain the idea of trading Cat. I don't know to where, but I would.
Not that you would get much for D'Lo.
No, you wouldn't, but I mean, it might be that player that you have to sweeten the pot with in a Cat trade or something, you know? Yeah. I haven't thought about the where, but I really feel like Cat's the problem. I think that team needs a lead guard. As ridiculous as it sounds, I would ask the Lakers, like, is there some way we could do D'Lo and match money for Westbrook? Like, to me, Westbrook's mentality is what Ant-Man needs. Rudy plays good off of that. Yeah, but except you're going to get a little bit more offense from Russell Westbrook than you got for Beverly. So I think that's why, that's kind of weird to think about. But he's going to take the ball to the bucket. And the reason I say that is because if you look at how Westbrook played in OKC with Steven Adams, being that they're great on-ball pickers, Rudy plays the same way. So the closest way to get Russ back to prime Russ is with a player like that, and then you throw in an Ant-Man and a Big Cat. That team might be scary, you know?
Yeah.
That's just me. One team that disappoints me is Golden State. I really had high hopes for them again. They worry me a little bit because I don't think that they know how to figure it out. Like, they know how to figure it out, but I don't think they're persuaded that they have the talent to do it again.
Yeah, they didn't make any huge changes. Do you think it has anything to do with the punch?
No, I don't. I really don't. I was trying to think about who did they lose from last year, and the players that they lost really weren't that big a difference. You know, like the Toscano Andersons and the Otto Porters. But, Gary Payton was a tough loss.
Yeah, Gary
Payton.
I'm
not sold on DiVincenzo. I don't understand why DiVincenzo's getting more playing time than Moses Moody.
Well, yeah, Moody and Wiseman and their young guys just haven't looked. Kuminga, they haven't looked as good as they were hoping, and they've been playing them a lot. So, it makes sense. You want these young guys, the future, to see what they have, but they're not showing that they have much. So then it comes to a point later in the season, or when in the season does Kerr say, screw it, or they go and get a few veteran rotation guys to take those minutes?
Well, I'm going to hate saying this, but fuck. So James Wiseman in no time, I don't think will ever fit that kind of system, right? So then I have to think about who could use James Wiseman. And the team that offers me the most talent to use right now would be somebody like Toronto. There's no doubt in my mind that they could get Pascal Siakam on Golden State for James Wiseman and another player. Like, I see that happening. Do you think something like that would help them?
I don't think Toronto would do it. Siakam would definitely help them. I know you're lower on Siakam than most, but a guy like Siakam could really rejuvenate that team.
Well, that's my point. Is like if you know that you're like a team like Toronto, it's like, okay, Siakam's they know what he offers them, but I still have a Scotty Barnes. I still got an OG. I still got Gary Trent. So I have starters. Well, I take on Wiseman, hope that he produces, but I'm still going to ask for like a first round pick or two or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're Golden State, do you do what you have to make that trade happen to bring in that kind of player?
They're going to have to at some point.
I agree. I think they need a 3-4, a wing that can score.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top four that are in the West: Suns, Nuggets, Pelicans, Grizzlies. It's kind of weird to say it, but as of right now, they're not matching up well against them. And you see it in the games. I mean, they were talking about how Clay's took a step back and everything, and now he's playing a little better and all that stuff. And at first, I thought it was
Houston and went off. That's all it takes. He just needs to see the Rockets court, and then he goes off. It's like, what the hell?
Ironically, and it's just like, at first I was like, well, maybe it's one of those things. Like, I mean, it's Golden State. You want to figure that they're going to figure it out. But if you watch them, you're kind of seeing like they're not figuring it out. Like, even in that Rockets game, they struggled with a young Rockets team that was just out there hooping. And it's like, how the hell is this supposed to happen? Like, and
I really feel like they missed the shooting of a player like Otto Porter. Because Kuminga's not offering you that. He's a go to the basket guy. And like, you need guys like that. And I just think like Pascal could offer you a shit ton of minutes.
Clay's not looking good either.
The past week or so he has, but yeah, before that he was bad. He was bad. And I don't know if he needs to come off the bench or he needs to have his minutes gone down. I think it's his minutes need to go down a little bit. But also I think that I'm not a real big fan of Jordan Poole. I understand he can hoop. He's a bucket getter, but so is J.R. Smith. And I didn't want J.R. Smith running my offense.
They expect so much out of Poole.
Right.
I mean, not only financially with the contract, but also just in the game. And I think Poole, like you said, he can get buckets, but it's tough to put a ton of faith in someone that streaky. He's almost like a younger Jordan Clarkson with more potential. Because I think overall he could be better than Clarkson is, but Clarkson some games looks like trash and is 5 of 18 from the field and he tanks the offense. But in other games he's 14 of 20 and he's on fire. And Poole's the same way. It's just tough to put so much faith in a guy who's so hit or miss.
I feel like Jordan Poole is everything Portland wants Anthony Simons to be.
I can see that.
But Nick is right, bro. Like, Golden State has to do something because I get y'all won the championship last year, and in theory, you think players get experience from that. But if you started the playoffs today and Golden State played a team like New Orleans, I would take New Orleans in 5. That team is so deep and so good. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that the Warriors as is are going to be able to compete in the West.
Yeah, a lot of season left. They've been here before. Curry's playing out of his mind like usual, so it's, I think, a little too early to completely panic, but there's some bad signs.
I agree with that 100%. I just don't want Steph Curry to have to carry the same workload he did last year. Like, he's not built for that. He's not built for that. And do something. I would rather panic early before it gets too bad and you have to fix it, you know?
Luckily, the only teams on their heels are, I mean, they're out. They're right now. They're in 9th, but I doubt that they fall behind Jazz and Trailblazers going forward as we move on. But right now, it's only Mavericks and Timberwolves on their heels.
To some extent, the Mavericks are a little bit of a disappointment considering they made the Western Conference Finals and they're barely a 500 team.
And they got a superstar in Christian Wood.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're a 500 team.
Honestly, I feel better about the Portland. I know we were low on Portland coming in this season, and but they've been playing well without Lillard playing on a lot of these games. Anthony Simon, speaking of him, he's taking that McCollum role and almost improving upon it. He's a lot more explosive than McCollum was. He's quicker than McCollum was. And when Lillard gets back healthy, and then Grant's been playing out of his mind, like these guys they brought in that we were all like hesitant if that was a good fit, they're all playing well. And if Nurkic stays healthy and they keep this core healthy, which it seems like they never do, I like this Portland team. I really do. I think they could be a dangerous play-in team.
I don't think they're this. Even if they don't, it's okay this year because their team is a little bit built for the next 2 or 3. Because like they brought in Jeremy Grant, they brought in Gary Payton Jr., and those guys are kind of grimy. That team was a little bit soft. But the fact that they took a chance in the draft on Shaedon Sharpe and he actually looks like he's could be something, I like that. Because you could potentially have a superstar there, and we just don't know it. Because he had no college experience. He sat out the whole year at Duke, and then they're like, all right, we'll see. And you never know. You might have a
diamond in the rough
there.
Shoot.
Obviously, the Lakers suck. I don't know what to tell them.
That's not a surprise, though.
Bro, explain to me how Rob Pelinka isn't fired yet.
Yeah, the Westbrook trade, and it's been shit on, and everyone talks about it all the time. But that trade was the turning point, maybe in LeBron's career, because LeBron definitely wanted what, no matter what he says now, he definitely wanted 1 or 2 more titles for the discussion. And that trade itself may have eliminated that idea. I don't see what moves they can possibly do. And since he signed the extension and he can't get traded, what moves could get them to title contenders in the next 2 years, barring a ridiculous Anthony Davis trade who's playing well again. But you would need to trade Davis for a guy Davis's caliber plus 2 or 3 role players, which isn't realistic. So
I would entertain the idea of trading Anthony Davis. I really would.
For what makes you better, though?
Well, I get that, but I mean, he's so hit or miss. He's just soft to me. I don't like that. Like you in theory, Anthony Davis should be the best big man in the league, in my opinion. Like you have that much skill, and you're not. Yeah. You shy away from the 5 position. You complain a lot. You do a lot of like things that are not fundamentally sound that make you smaller than what you are. And the reason I feel like they should do it is because think about it. If you were a Laker, right? And it's like, if I trade Anthony Davis this year for anything, even if it's just something that I can trade again, then that means that I have trade options. And then I'm going to dump Westbrook's contract after this year. So I have money. Yeah, the problem with having the money is there's nobody to sign. So somebody's ass got to get traded if you plan on bringing somebody back.
And you ain't trading LeBron, so
exactly. And you have nothing else on that team.
Don't waste my time here.
Exactly. Yeah, trading Anthony Davis 1 for 1 for almost any player in the NBA wouldn't make him contenders. Like if you put Giannis or Luka, which obviously none of those teams would trade those guys for them, but that's just how bad the Lakers team is outside of LeBron and Davis, which makes a potential Davis trade. Like even if you went to the Timberwolves and were like, hey, we'll take Cat and Russell, like Davis and Gobert would be another weird fit. It'd be a good defensive team, but then also
it doesn't make the Lakers better.
Yeah, that makes the Lakers worse, honestly.
It'd be an even worse rebounding team.
Yeah, so there's no move there, but enough on the Lakers.
Yeah, they suck.
The only thing I could think of is you got to make small trades and hope those players play bigger than they are, but I don't see anything with them. I mean, it sucks too because they're almost in last place. They got 7 wins, and they don't have any of their first-round picks, so you get nothing from this.
That's why I'm saying you have to trade something in hopes of making a change that is substantial enough to help to appease LeBron. Yeah. And if that means Anthony Davis, then it has to be Anthony Davis because we gave up everything to get him to appease LeBron. So it's like, man, I got rid of this chick for this chick, but now she's pissing me off. So now I'm gonna get rid of this chick for this chick. So it's just the nature of the beast, you know. But also, before we get off the Western Conference, I want the Thunder are in 12th place at 8-12. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is balling out of his mind. Like that dude has to be considered in the MVP talks. Like seriously, like not that he'll win it. He shouldn't. They're in 9th place, but 11th place, whatever they're in. But like he's definitely playing like a top 10 player this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and everyone's like, why don't they trade him? It's like, why would you trade him? He's still young. He could be the core of your franchise. I don't think they will trade him, but I think that talk is dumb. It's like, oh, his trade value is as high as it's ever going to be. It's like, no, but this is a guy you can build your franchise around. When Chet comes back next year, and you keep adding these young guys like Giddey and all their picks, this is just showing that Shai can be the guy. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means he can be a guy to win multiple playoff series, but it's definitely encouraging for Thunder's fans. And they've been a fun team to watch. Poku's playing more. I don't know how Poku hasn't added any weight. He's like
not even a 1 pound. It's like, how do you live? Well, he's at Oklahoma City, so I mean, they probably don't have a lot of food variety there, but whatever.
I guess they have some Whataburgers, but it's not
like you get barbecue, Mexican, or a burger.
Yeah, him and Chet need to just out eat each other. Chet, this is actually like the silver lining for Chet being hurt, though, is he could put on weight because he won't be playing. Because when you're playing 30 minutes a game like he might have been, it's so much harder to add any weight. But now he should just be eating. They should just be giving him like nasty 60-40 beef and just like the fattiest stuff. They need to bulk him up.
My Rockets stay pretty much where they were last year in last place, but we're super competitive. We just don't know how to finish games.
Yeah, what do you think is it's the defense? I mean, the defense hasn't been great.
It is the defense, but because if you look at our offensive numbers, we line up with the best in the West. I mean, I think that we get so content on playing bad one-on-one basketball at the end of games. It's really hard to play defense when they're running on us. Yeah. So stop taking bad shots in the fourth
hero
quarter.
Ball at the end, and it costs them like drastically. Like they'll chunk up a three, and then boom, the other team has 3 people running down to score, and it's just like great.
I do think that like there needs to be a trade made with Houston. Like no disrespect to Eric Gordon, like we'll always remember you. You could always come back, but there's no place on this team for you anymore. Like we need those minutes for the young guys. Same to Garrison Matthews. And at the end of this year, I'd like to see a new head coach in Houston.
Yep.
Really?
I have nothing against Steven Silas. Like he doesn't do a bad job, but I also don't think he doesn't excite me. He's not a rah-rah coach. I think that he's X's and O's and he doesn't develop very well. Like he doesn't develop talent.
That's what you need right now is a development guy who's going to grow with the team. Like the Bucks had Larry Drew for that year, and then they dumped him for Kidd. Like it's tough when you bring in a coach and then let them go when you start to get good. It's not a good look. But yeah, it's tough to put too much on him, but maybe.
Yeah, but my issue is like if everybody here is saying quit playing isolation basketball, and then you get on TV and say, well, statistically, we're one of the better offensive one-on-one teams in the league, so we're still going to do it a little. It's like, oh, well, now you pissed everybody off.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And then 2 is you excessively play people who are not doing anything. Like Josh Christopher balled out for Houston last year. You used the first-round pick to draft Ty Washington, yet you played Deshaun Nix 15 minutes last night, and all he offered you was 1 rebound. They can't happen,
You're just running laps out there.
How do you feel about going for like a third straight top 2 or 3 pick?
Considering the fact that we statistically and numerically, there's a way we could get into the play-in, but I don't want to be in the play-in because we're going to lose to anybody anyway. Yeah. So if you tell me, I'm okay with getting a top 2 or 3 pick. I really am. Like Nick said on Bayou City Boys the other day, even if you don't want the player, you want the pick. I'll trade it. And that's what we need to do. I want to see Houston figure out where we stand on draft night. Because if you have a chance to get Victor Wembanyama, you take him.
What still puts you have this year?
We have our pick and we have Brooklyn's pick.
Is it a swap or you just have it?
No, this year we straight up have it. Next year is the swap.
Hmm.
So this is the last year we really have we benefit from draft. But it's like, what do you do? Like, say for instance, we don't have the first pick, we get the second pick, and we say we take Scoot Henderson. Okay, cool. He's a damn good player. That's our point guard. But now what do you do with Kevin Porter? Do you ask him to go to the bench? Do you trade him? What do you do? So I think we're still up until draft night, everything for Houston is available, possible. So it's really hard to tell. I just want to continue to see the young guys play, because the ones who played bad last year showed up this year ready to hoop, and then we drafted good rookies. So I like us moving forward.
I mean, Jalen Green, there's just the past 2 games alone, he's shown all right, this is my team. I'm gonna take over, and he's dominating a bit more. And Jabari, finally, people are letting him just be his 19-year-old self.
And he's playing well. Dude is hooping. My favorite thing about Jabari is I feel like let's be completely honest. It's a real potential that Jalen Green might be an asshole.
Facts.
Because as his confidence grows, I feel like either his true self is coming out or something's coming out. But the fact that you look at Trae Young and say, I'm going to beat your goofy ass, I like that. You know what I mean? So we're good.
Yeah. I think him and Kevin Porter, though, for sure, are clicking, because they were tagging each other on Instagram, look at this goofy ass dude, this and that. They're just young dudes trying to have fun. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's I like to see players, if you're gonna be real 100%. Be you and just enjoy yourself, because
the Houston Rockets are the complete opposite of what OKC is. No disrespect to them, but they've drafted legitimate hoopers on that team. Our local broadcast calls our youngsters the Goon Squad. It's okay, half these dudes can't really hoop, but they the effort that you get from Garuba and Tari Eason is ridiculous. So we don't necessarily play the prettiest brand of basketball, but I think we could play with anybody. In my opinion.
Victor Wembanyama for president. Yeah.
Ah, man, I'm so weird. I don't know what about that guy. Because I feel like Sengun is going to be a superstar. So what do you do if you get Victor?
Victor can kind of play anywhere, I think.
Could you foresee a lineup with Jabari at the 3, Sengun at the 4, and Wembanyama at the 5? That's a good young core to me. With Jalen, I like that.
How much I'm working for this? I swear my dreams are too important.